Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into the bustling, slightly grimy, yet oddly charming streets of 18th century Paris, where the air smells faintly of bread soot and perhaps a whiff of vinegar from a pickle barrel. You're wandering through narrow alleys, your shoes slipping on cobblestones, polished smooth by centuries of footsteps dodging horse dung with the grace of a practiced Parisian, while the cries of street vendors echo around you. A woman selling roasted chestnuts yells from the corner. A boy with tangled hair and a cap too big for his head offers tallow candles from a wooden tray. And there's that unmistakable aroma of roasting meat, though you'd rather not ask what kind. Life here isn't exactly a candlelit romance, despite what the poets might say. It's dirty, chaotic, and survival isn't guaranteed. You'll navigate shady characters, desperate workers, and a whole city that operates like an open-air market run by rules you didn't get the memo for. Honestly, you probably won't survive this without a good pair of shoes, some quick wits, and a tolerance for questionable hygiene. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where are you listening from and what time is it where you are. Post it in the comments. Just a fun way for us to connect across time and space. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the crowded market square of Les Salles, Paris's beating heart. It's 5 a.m. Still dark, and the city feels like it's holding its breath. The first light of day will reveal a symphony of sights, sounds, and smells. Fishmongers lug crates of writhing eels, their slippery bodies twisting in protest. A baker dusted in flour like a ghost sells warm loaves straight from the oven. The scent is divine, yeasty, toasty, a brief moment of heaven in a city that sometimes feels more like purgatory. A woman named Marie shouts from her cart, selling oranges and exotic luxury in a city that mostly knows turnips and cabbages. Her voice is hoarse, her hands red from the cold. She's one of the marchandas market women who dominate the streets with their voices, their tempers, and their sheer grit. Historians still argue whether these women had real economic power or if they were just pawns in a bigger system, but either way, they ran the show down here. As you wander, you see a man selling live songbird from tiny wooden cages. He's promising they'll sing the blues right out of your heart, though you suspect they might just squawk until they escape. The cobblestones are slick, the air is damp, and your stomach growls at the scent of sizzling sausages nearby. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some vendors sell Paris mud, yes, actual mud scooped from the Seine, touted as a magical skin treatment for women who want a smooth, youthful complexion. No judgment, just maybe avoid getting it in your eyes. A cart rattles past you, driven by a man with a top hat tilted rakishly to one side. His horse looks like it's seen better days, ribs showing beneath its hide, but it plods along steadily. That's how life feels here, steady, determined, and a little scrappy. You tuck your hands into your coat, feeling the cold seep into your bones, but there's something magical about it all. This isn't the polished, romantic Paris you see on postcards. It's raw, it's real, and it's full of stories waiting to be told. As the sky lightens, you hear the distant clang of church bells marking the hour. Vendors shout louder now, customers haggle, and someone nearby starts playing a fiddle, the tune wobbly but spirited. You can't help but smile. This is Paris, in its messy, beautiful glory, and you're right in the thick of it. You move deeper into the labyrinth of market stalls where the scents blend into a strange perfume of onions, roasted nuts, horse sweat, and something suspiciously fishy. It's the kind of smell that would send a modern perfume maker running for the hills. But here in 18th century Paris, it's just the olfactory soundtrack of daily life. Your shoes scuff along uneven cobblestones as you dodge a puddle of, well, let's just hope it's rainwater, and sidestep a baker's boy darting by with a tray of steaming pastries balanced on his head. Over by the stone wall, a young man sells ribbons and lace. He's trying to convince a gaggle of women that the blue dye he's using won't stain their fingers. Spoiler, it probably will. The dye, made from indigo and sometimes mixed with urine, is notorious for turning hands an unappealing shade of blue. Historians still debate whether these small vendors actually made much profit or were simply part of a cycle of debt, barely scraping by under the weight of fees, taxes, and occasional bribes to keep their stall space. You pause to watch a toothless old man, Monsieur Dupont, they call him, hawking what he claims are healing potions. His bottles glisten in the dim light, filled with liquids that could be anything from vinegar to wine to something much, much worse. You see him selling a small vial to a woman clutching a handkerchief to her nose. She looks worried. Is it a cure, a love potion, or just a fancy way to sell tap water from the Seine? The truth is, no one knows for sure. The street vendors are a mix of savvy salesmanship and half-baked alchemy. Your stomach grumbles again, and you glance at the roasted chestnut vendor across the way. He's an older man with a face like crumpled parchment and hands that move fast, flipping the chestnuts in their iron pan over the open flame. They hiss and pop, filling the air with the warm, smoky scent of autumn. You're tempted to buy some, but you remember the price he tried to charge you earlier, twice the going rate. The man grins at you now as if daring you to bargain. As you keep walking, you notice a cart loaded with Parisian delicacies, a polite term for what you realize is actually tripe. That's cow stomach boiled and sold in thick slices, often slathered in mustard to disguise its, shall we say, unique flavor. The vendor, a stout woman with cheeks like ripe apples, is singing a little tune about how tripe strengthens the heart and calms the nerves. Historians argue whether such street food was really the working man's staple or more of a desperation meal for those who couldn't afford better. Either way, it's hot, it's filling, and it keeps people coming back. A sudden commotion pulls your attention to a knot of people gathered around a man in a velvet coat. He's got a wooden case open on the ground, displaying small glass jars filled with, what is that? Powdered beetles, crushed pearls. He's whispering about miraculous beauty powders that promise to remove freckles, smooth wrinkles, and for an extra coin, restore a husband's wandering affection. A few women lean in, fascinated. One man in the back rolls his eyes. The air feels thick with possibility, or maybe that's just the damp fog rolling in from the sand. Your breath puffs out in little clouds, mingling with the steam rising from pots of soup and stew bubbling over open fires. You wonder what's in those pots, probably lentils, barley, maybe a scrap of meat if someone's lucky. As the bells chime the hour again, you glance up at the buildings looming overhead, their windows like watchful eyes. Laundry flutters on lines strung between balconies. A cat slinks along a ledge, pausing to survey the scene below. Somewhere a baby wails, a dog barks, and the street bustles on. You're part of this strange tangled web of commerce, survival, and everyday drama. It's messy, it's noisy, and sometimes it's downright absurd. But it's also alive, pulsing with stories waiting to unfold. You pull your coat tighter and keep moving, the sounds of vendors, customers, and clinking coins wrapping around you like a blanket woven from voices, laughter, and the occasional shout of "watch your step." The sun creeps higher over the slate rooftops, casting long shadows across the market as you wander past a vendor who with a wink claims to have the best bread in all of Paris. His stand is nothing more than a rickety table propped up on crates, the wood bowing under the weight of loaves, dusted in flour like a powdered wig. You catch the warm, yeasty scent of freshly baked bread, mixed with the faint tang of sourdough, left too long in the back. The man leans in, his voice low as if sharing a scandalous secret. Psst, these are the fresh ones, but if you want the real deal, follow me around back. Curiosity tugs at you, and you find yourself peeking behind the stall. There, hidden under a threadbare cloth, lies a pile of yesterday's bread, hard as bricks, but half the price. It's an open secret in these parts. The wealthy might sniff at the thought, but for those stretching a few sous as far as they'll go, yesterday's bread makes the perfect soup thickener or toast if you can spare the firewood. Historians still debate whether these back alley deals were born out of necessity or pure entrepreneurial mischief, but either way, it's part of the dance of survival. The baker's wife glances over her shoulder, grinning like a fox, and slips a small roll to a barefoot boy who darts off without paying. Was it charity or just a wink and nod understanding of the city's unspoken rules? Hard to say. As you move on, the symphony of voices grows louder, and you catch snippets of bargains, gossip, and the occasional half-hearted curse. A fishmonger's sleeves rolled up in apron-stained dark gestures wildly with a gutted mackerel in hand, arguing with a woman in a bonnet over the freshness of the catch. You wrinkle your nose. Fresh is a generous term when it comes to fish in the heart of the city. To mask the less than fresh aroma, someone scattered sawdust across the cobblestones, a common trick of the trade. It soaks up the drips of melted ice and other things, and if you squint, it almost works. Almost. There's a story whispered between vendors that some use lavender or mint in the sawdust, trying to outshine the competition, but more often than not, it was just yesterday's scraps mixed in. You have to admire the optimism. A little further on, you stumble into a cloud of feathers. Live chickens squawking in wicker cages, their beady eyes glinting like marbles. The poultry seller, a stout man with arms like hams, yells out prices while holding up a particularly indignant-looking hen. The woman next to you haggles fiercely, her voice sharp enough to slice butter, and you wonder if she'll get a discount or just a headache. It's not just food that lines the streets. A ragged man, his coat patched with more colors than a quilt, spreads out an assortment of oddities, rusted scissors, bent spoons, and bits of lace. He waves a cracked mirror in your direction, muttering about its magical properties. He claims it can reveal a thief's true face. You catch your own reflection, distorted and blurred, and decide maybe he's not entirely wrong. Just as you're about to turn away, a woman with a basket of herbs catches your eye. She's older, her hair pulled back in a tight bun with fingers stained green from constant contact with leaves and stems. She offers feverfew for headaches, rue for protection, and a curious little pouch she claims holds powdered snail shells, good for matters of the heart. Whether she means romance or heartburn, you're not quite sure, but you admire her confidence. The air is thick now, a blend of smoke from roasting chestnuts, the sharp tang of vinegar from pickled cabbage, and the unmistakable whiff of damp wool from the crowd's clothing. A fiddler nearby starts up a tune, something jaunty, slightly off-key, and the rhythm seems to match the chaotic heartbeat of the market. You glance down to find a small dog sitting at your feet, its tail wagging in time with the music, a silent request for a morsel you don't have. There's a strange beauty in it, all the clatter of wooden carts, the clinking of coins, the murmur of a city just waking up. The cobbles underfoot feel cold, your breath forms little clouds in the crisp air, and you realize this is Paris. Not in its grandeur, but in its grit, the world of people who wake up before dawn, who sell, bargain, and scrape by in the shadow of grand buildings and powdered wigs. You tuck your hands into your coat, the chill biting at your fingers, and keep moving, the whispers of vendors and the smell of roasted chestnuts curling around you like a fog. The sun climbs slowly, brushing warm light across the market's chaos, though it does little to ease the chill clinging to your bones. You find yourself drawn toward a stall that smells oddly of brine and decay, a fishmonger's patch, a riot of scales, fins, and the sharp tang of the sea transported by cartloads into the heart of the city. You try not to breathe too deeply as you approach, but the scent is insistent, wrapping itself around you like a damp blanket. A man with a leathery face and hands like gnarled tree roots is gutting a carp with practiced precision scales, flicking onto the cobbles in a fine iridescent spray. He hums a little tune, something about a sailor who fell for a mermaid and lost his fortune at sea. The fishmonger offers you a wink and a sliver of salted herring, which you decline politely. Historians still argue whether the fish trade in Paris was more of a survival tactic or an outright swindle. After all, fresh fish in a city so far from the ocean was a rare thing, often arriving already past its prime. That's where the sawdust trick comes in. You notice it underfoot, a thick scattering of sawdust, damp and dark, masking the puddles of melted ice and other unmentionables. It's a common enough sight here, but there's a rumor that some vendors go a step further, sprinkling in crushed herbs or even citrus peels to soften the smell. Does it work? Well, let's just say your nose isn't convinced. The fishmonger, undeterred, swears his goods are the finest in Paris, though you're fairly certain that mackerel's seen better days. A woman beside you grumbles as she hands over a few sous for a small withered eel. Her expression is tight, a blend of resignation and hunger. You wonder if she'll stew it with onions or perhaps pickle it. Preservation is the name of the game in a world without reliable refrigeration. Nearby, a boy with a bucket calls out, offering to scale and clean your fish for a small fee, though you suspect he'll pocket half the fish if you turn your back. As you step away, a loud voice rises behind you. It's an old man in a ragged waistcoat hawking miracle cures made from fish bones ground into powder. He swears it'll cure gout fevers and the melancholy of the modern mind. His table is cluttered with small glass jars, each labeled in a shaky hand. One woman clutches a jar to her chest, eyes wide with hope, while a man nearby scoffs under his breath, muttering about charlatans. You pause, watching the scene unfold. A seagull, bold as brass, swoops down and snatches a piece of fish right from the table, earning a string of curses in French that would make a priest blush. The vendors barely glance up. This is just another day in the life of Paris's fish trade, a messy dance of supply, demand, and creative problem solving. A little further along, you stumble upon a woman selling buckets of what she proudly calls river fresh oysters. You glance at the murky water in the bucket, your stomach turning slightly at the thought. She laughs, teeth missing, and assures you they're as fresh as the scent itself. A man buying a dozen shoots you a look that's equal parts pity and amusement. He's either incredibly brave or incredibly hungry. And here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some vendors are known to soak their fish in a solution of vinegar and herbs overnight to mask the smell. It's not exactly foolproof, but in a city where clean water is a luxury and fresh fish is a gamble, it's a clever workaround. Whether the customers are fooled or simply resigned is another matter entirely. The cries of the market swirl around you. Offers, shouted prices, haggled deals struck with a slap on the back and a nod. You pass by a stall selling live eels, their sleek bodies twisting and writhing in a barrel. One particularly feisty eel flings itself over the edge, landing with a slap on the cobbles. The vendor, a wiry man with a voice like gravel, lunges after it, cursing as the eel slithers under a nearby cart. Your shoes crunch on the sawdust as you step away, the faint stickiness of the fish market lingering in the air. The sun is higher now, glinting off the glass windows of the surrounding buildings, but down here in the street, it's still a world of grit and hustle. The vendors hawk their goods, the customers haggle, and the fish, well, the fish keeps on smelling. You pull your coat tighter, tucking your chin down against the cold, and keep walking, your ears full of market cries and your nose full of salt smoke and just a hint of citrus from that optimistic sawdust. The hum of the market sharpens as more vendors set up, the chatter and clang of metal carts blending into a steady rhythm of commerce. You shuffle past a cluster of women selling woolen caps and mittens, coarse and scratchy to the touch, but a necessary shield against the winter chill. A wiry woman with a weathered face. Madeline, she tells you, hollers about her newest design in mufflers, though it looks suspiciously like the same pattern she's been knitting for 20 years. You smile politely as she tries to wrap one around your neck, claiming it will ward off both cold and heartbreak. You're drawn next to a group of children huddled near a man juggling tin cups. His hat lies on the ground, a few scattered coins inside, and he's balancing the cups with a grin so wide it threatens to split his face. The children watch wide-eyed, though they're equally captivated by the small dog that sits beside him wearing a ridiculous paper crown. The dog yaps in rhythm with the man's clinking cups, and the scene feels more like a carnival than a marketplace. Not far from the juggler, a boy of perhaps 10 years stands behind a basket of apples, their red skins glossy under the morning light. He calls out their virtues, crisp, sweet, perfect for tarts, and you can't help but wonder if he's tasted one himself today. His boots have holes in the toes, and his hands are raw from the cold, yet his voice rings with hope. There's a whispered debate among historians about the lives of such street children. Were they working for family businesses, or were they orphans scraping by however they could? You glance at the boy's thin frame and suspect it's often both. A loud clanging startles you. It's a man with a dented tin pot banging it with a wooden spoon, advertising his wares. Pots, pans, and kitchen knives, all with dubious sharpness. He promises they'll cut a carrot like butter and last a lifetime, or at least until the next market day. You pass by with a grin, noting how the dent in the pot he's banging seems to deepen with each strike. The smell of roasting chestnuts returns stronger now, and mingled with the sharper tang of vinegar from a stall selling pickled vegetables, onions, cucumbers, and even garlic cloves, their pale skins gleaming in the sun. A woman behind the stall sings softly to herself, a tune that might be an old lullaby or a folk song. She's missing a few teeth, but her eyes sparkle as she plucks a jar from the display and tries to tempt a passing man with promises of a pickle to make you strong and bold. He declines, looking unconvinced. Another vendor catches your attention, an elderly man selling quills, ink pots, and sheets of paper, their edges curled slightly from the damp air. His sign boasts letters for lovers, businessmen, and poets, and he offers to sharpen your quill for a few sous extra. You pause, running your fingers over a stack of paper, wondering how many confessions of love debts owed or secrets shared have been scratched onto parchment just like this. A sudden gust of wind stirs the market, rustling papers, flapping canvas canopies, and sending a few loose feathers swirling through the air from a nearby poultry cellar. The feathers stick to your coat, and as you brush them off, you hear a woman muttering about how the weather always seems to conspire against her best laid plans. She's selling tiny cloth dolls' poupées with faces stitched in uneven lines and hair made from bits of leftover yarn. She insists they're charmed for good fortune, though you suspect it's the charm of her sales pitch that matters more. Nearby, an older man in a thick wool coat sells hot wine by the ladleful, steam rising in curls that carry the scent of clove cinnamon, and something you can't quite place, perhaps anise or orange peel. You buy a small cup, grateful for the warmth, and sip carefully, the heat spreading through your chest. It's sweet, a little sour, and strong enough to make you feel a bit braver, if not exactly warmer. A small crowd gathers around a man holding a stack of pamphlets. He's reading aloud, his voice loud and dramatic, proclaiming the latest gossip from the royal court, some scandal about a noble's affair, or a tax dispute that's ruffled powdered wigs. The listeners hang on his words, and you notice the sly grins exchanged between those who clearly enjoy hearing the high and mighty tangled in their own messes. And here's a little known detail. Some vendors slip bits of news and gossip into their sales pitches, offering customers an extra nugget of intrigue along with their goods. It's a marketing trick that historians still debate. Was it gossip for entertainment or a form of subtle protest against the powers that be? You sip your wine and smile at the thought, watching the market swirl and hum around you, a living, breathing testament to the city's resilience and charm. The morning deepens into late morning, and the rhythm of the market shifts yet again like a wave cresting and then gently receding. The air carries the faint tang of roasted onion sweet pastries and the sour bite of unwashed bodies, all mingling into a kind of perfume only a Paris street could create. You shuffle past a man selling buttons of every imaginable size and shape, the tiny discs laid out in neat rows, their colors dulled by dust. He calls them baubles of fortune, claiming they bring good luck to those who sew them on their coats. Historians still argue whether such charms were truly believed or simply a sales pitch, but here in the bustle of it all, it feels like both. Beside him, a girl no older than 12 cradles a basket of lavender sachets, the faded blooms wrapped in scraps of muslin. She hums as she works, tucking each bundle into a customer's hand with a soft pour le bonheur. The scent is subtle, but it cuts through the heavier smells like a thread of calm in the chaos. You can't help but wonder if she knows how precious that lavender is imported at great cost, a luxury grown in distant fields, far from the cobbled streets under her worn shoes. Your steps slow as you pass a man selling polished stones, smooth glinting pebbles, each supposedly holding special properties. He insists that the red ones bring courage, the green ones wealth, and the blue ones. Well, he hasn't quite decided yet. He chuckles as he says this, revealing a grin, with a few teeth missing as if daring you to challenge him. A woman nearby clutches a small stone, turning it over in her palm, like a secret, her eyes darting nervously. You wonder if she's hoping for love or perhaps a bit of luck in the coming days. The market narrows where the buildings lean closer, their upper floors practically touching above your head, creating a shadowed corridor of voices and commerce. Here the street widens just enough for a barrel organ player, his fingers dancing across the keys as the music wobbles out in breathy, tinny notes. A small boy with an upturned hat stands nearby collecting coins with the solemn duty of a banker. The song is slow, a little off-key, and yet it holds the power to still the bustle, if only for a moment. You pause watching a woman in a bonnet select a handful of roasted chestnuts from a vendor's cart. The vendor, an older man with a bushy mustache and a laugh like gravel, teases her about her dainty appetite before tossing in an extra chestnut for free. It's a small gesture, but it's these small kindnesses that weave the fabric of market life, quiet, unrecorded moments that no historian can fully capture. Yet somehow they're the ones that linger. A little further on, you spot a man selling secondhand shoes, each pair lined up neatly, though none quite match in style or size. He shouts about their virtues, solid as a priest's sermon, softer than a duchess's heart, and you can't help but chuckle. There's a sly glint in his eye, as though he knows full well his wares are a patchwork of old leather, but he's determined to sell every last pair. Another vendor, a tall woman with a weathered face, leans over her table of ribbons and beads, threading a needle with fingers so quick you barely see the movement. She offers a half smile, muttering that her ribbons will bring color to the plainest day. You admire her handiwork, noticing the tiny uneven stitches that somehow hold the whole creation together. It's a reminder you think that even in a world built on grand architecture and powdered wigs, it's the hands of the ordinary that keep the city stitched together. The clang of a bell draws your attention to a cart creaking down the street, its wheels groaning as a man calls out the price of firewood. Bundles tied with frayed rope sway as the cart moves, and you can almost feel the collective longing in the air. A bundle of wood means warmth, a chance for hot stew, maybe even a few stolen moments of comfort by the hearth. It's a small thing, but in this city of cold stones and colder nights, it's everything. As the crowd ebbs and flows around you, you notice a sign leaning against a wall, advertising a cure-all elixir for sale at the far end of the street. The promise is vague health, vitality, and joy, but the crowd lining up seems eager enough. You wonder what's really in that bottle. Honey, perhaps, or a strong shot of brandy disguised as medicine. Historians still debate whether such cures were genuine efforts or clever tricks to empty wallets, but watching the hopeful faces in line, you suspect it's a bit of both. You take a breath, the air heavy with stories, some true, some half-truths, and some too strange to believe, and you keep walking, the cobblestones beneath your feet, and the hum of 18th century Paris in your ears, a lullaby of footsteps, voices, and the gentle clang of coins exchanging hands. The smell of roasting chestnuts fades behind you as the market shifts once again like a living thing, reshaping itself with every new hour. You find yourself drifting toward a small cluster of stalls where the merchants sell their goods with a more dramatic flair. Here, under faded cloth canopies, are the entertainers, the fortune tellers, the fire eaters, and the so-called miracle men, hawking elixir that sparkles suspiciously in the sunlight. One such fortune teller catches your eye, a woman draped in scarves of deep red and gold, her fingers heavy with rings that click softly as she gestures. Her table is cluttered with tarot cards, a crystal ball the size of a cabbage, and a small bowl filled with what looks suspiciously like dried chicken bones. She leans forward, her breath smelling faintly of aniseed, and tells you with great seriousness that you have the aura of a merchant prince. You try not to laugh, but she catches the twitch of your lips and narrows her eyes in mock offense. Her voice drops low, promising to reveal your future for a few sous. It's a curious thing, this blend of performance and belief. Historians still argue whether the people who flocked to fortune tellers truly believed in the power of the cards, or simply sought a moment of escape from the grind of daily life. Perhaps it's both. After all, even the most practical fishmonger might wonder late at night if his fate lies in the hands of the stars. A few steps away, a man in a top hat balances a snake around his shoulders, his pitch rising and falling in time with the creature's slow, sinuous movements. He promises that a sip of his elixir made from the venom of the rarest vipers will grant you strength, stamina, and maybe even eternal youth. You glance at the small bottle, murky yellow and suspiciously viscous, and decide you'll stick to chestnuts. A crowd gathers near a man performing sleight of hand with a deck of cards, his fingers moving so fast you almost miss the tricks entirely. He flips the ace of spades over and over, his voice smooth as silk, while his hat lies on the ground waiting for coins. You catch a glint in his eye as he calls out for volunteers, daring someone to spot the trick. A boy steps forward, eager only to leave, shaking his head a few coins lighter. You sidestep a pair of goats tethered to a cart, their bleats mingling with the soft clinking of spoons and bowls from a nearby food vendor. The vendor specialed a steaming pot of onion soup ladled into mismatched bowls. He claims it's the cure for all ills from heartbreak to a hangover, and you suspect there's at least a grain of truth in that. The scent is comforting, warm, and savory, with just a hint of something earthy, perhaps thyme or a sprig of rosemary, tucked in by a hopeful cook. Across from him, a woman sells sprigs of herbs tied in neat bundles. Sage for purification, thyme for courage, and rosemary for remembrance, she murmurs, pressing a sprig into your hand. You thank her, though you wonder if the rosemary will do much more than scent your pocket. Still, it's a sweet thought, and you tuck it into your coat. The street narrows further, the buildings looming overhead in a way that feels both cozy and a little claustrophobic. Laundry hangs from the upper windows, shirts, stockings, even a pair of bloomers fluttering in the breeze. And you're reminded that above all this bustle, families are living their quiet everyday lives. A mother calls down to her child who's chasing a hoop across the cobbles, and the sounds of laughter and scolding blend into the market's hum. You pause to admire a small table where a man sells wax seals, tiny metal stamps with intricate designs, fleur-de-lis, heart stars, and one that looks suspiciously like a turnip. He grins at your interest and offers to carve your initials onto a seal for a modest fee. Every letter deserves a signature as unique as its sender, he says, and you can't help but admire the sentiment. Nearby, a boy sells paper kites in bright colors. Their strings tangle like a cat's cradle. The wind tugs at them, sending the tails fluttering, and you imagine children running through the narrow streets, their kites bobbing against the gray Parisian sky. It's a fleeting moment of lightness, a reminder that even in a city of crowded stalls and sharp elbows, there's still room for a bit of whimsy. As you move on, the calls of the vendors blur into a kind of lullaby, soft, repetitive, rhythmic. The clink of coins, the rustle of fabric, the occasional burst of laughter. The market lives and breathes around you, its stories whispered in the shuffle of feet and the creak of wooden carts. You feel it all settle into your bones, the pulse of a city that thrives not just on grandeur, but on these small everyday moments, a glance, a gesture, a half smile shared between strangers. You adjust your scarf, feeling the rosemary tucked into your coat like a talisman, and step deeper into the maze of the market. The scent of herbs and soup and old coins lingering in the cool, shifting air. Your footsteps carry you toward the quieter edges of the market where the pace slows and the clamor softens into murmurs. Here, tucked into the folds of the cobbled street, you stumble upon a small stall that smells faintly of beeswax and ink. A thin man in a dusty brown coat sits behind a wooden table piled with pamphlets, almanacs, and little hand-printed books, each with titles scrawled in elegant looping script. He looks up as you approach, his spectacles perched precariously on his nose, and gestures toward a pamphlet that reads, "How to Predict the Weather by Cloud Shapes." You raise an eyebrow and he grins, adding in a conspiratorial whisper that it's guaranteed to work 60% of the time every time. You chuckle, flipping through pages filled with small woodcut illustrations of clouds that look suspiciously like blobs of mashed potatoes. There's something comforting about the simplicity of it all. How knowledge, whether precise or speculative, is packaged and sold with a wink. Historians still debate whether these little publications were genuinely helpful guides or clever distractions for the idle masses. You suspect they were both tools of learning and entertainment alike. Next to the pamphleteer sits an elderly woman selling candles, their wicks slightly bent, the wax flecked with bits of straw and dust. She leans close as you pass, whispering, "They're blessed, you know. Keep the darkness at bay." You nod politely, wondering if she means literal darkness, or the darker moods of the soul that settle in when nights are long and lonely. A boy no taller than your waist weaves through the crowd, balancing a tray of sugared almonds. His voice is high and bright, a sing-song call that drifts above the murmur of the market. He offers you a handful for a few sous, the almonds glistening under a light dusting of sugar. You pop one into your mouth, savoring the sweetness, the crunch giving way to a warmth that seems to melt across your tongue. Not far from him, a woman is selling small glass bottles, tiny things that fit in the palm of your hand filled with colored liquid. Elixirs for courage, for love, for luck, she chants softly. You wonder what's inside, perhaps rose water, maybe a splash of wine, but there's something in the way her eyes hold yours that makes you hesitate. The bottles glint like jewels, each a miniature promise. You thank her, declining, and she nods as if she knew you would. A sudden gust of wind sends a paper flyer skittering across the cobbles, and you chase after it, catching it just before it slips into a puddle. It's an announcement for a traveling puppet show coming to a nearby square. A story of a foolish king, a brave rat, and a baker's daughter who outwits them both. You smile at the thought of children gathered in laughter, their faces sticky with sugar, their eyes wide with wonder. The puppet shows you recall were a staple of Parisian street life, blending humor, politics, and the occasional moral lesson. Historians still argue whether these performances shaped public opinion or merely offered a fleeting distraction. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between. After all, who doesn't enjoy seeing a pompous king get bested by a clever rat now and then? As you tuck the flyer into your pocket, you're drawn to a nearby stall where an older man repairs broken objects, cracked clay pots, chipped teacups, and even a battered wooden comb. His hands are steady, his focus absolute, and you can almost hear the rhythm of his breath as he works. He glances up briefly, offering a nod before returning to his task with the quiet satisfaction of a craftsman who knows his worth. You pause, watching him fit a new handle onto a copper pot, the edges worn smooth by countless meals. There's something soothing about the click of his tools, the soft scrape of sandpaper, the low murmur of his humming a tune you can't quite place, but it feels like an old lullaby. You wonder how many lives have passed through his hands, how many stories are embedded in the objects he repairs. A woman nearby sells lengths of lace, her fingers deftly weaving patterns as she works. The lace is delicate, almost gossamer, and she murmurs that each piece holds a blessing if sewn into a wedding gown. Her eyes crinkle at the corners as she speaks, and you feel a warmth in her smile as though she stitched a bit of herself into every piece. The market flows on a tapestry of voices and textures, scents and stories. You breathe it all in, the sweetness of sugared almonds, the faint scent of beeswax, the rustle of lace and paper, and let it settle deep into your bones, a memory you'll carry with you, woven into the quiet hum of this Parisian street. The sun begins to shift in the sky, casting a hazy glow over the cobblestones, and you find yourself weaving between a small crowd gathered around a man with a donkey. The donkey, you quickly notice, isn't just standing there, it's wearing a tiny hat perched at a jaunty angle, and a sign slung around its neck reads, "Fortune telling, donkey one, so one future." The man, grinning as if he's just invented a new form of alchemy, invites you to ask the donkey a question and receive the wisdom of the ages. You can't resist. He hands you a small slip of paper after the donkey sniffs your coat and sneezes dramatically. The fortune reads, "Beware of soggy bread." You blink, unsure whether to laugh or be impressed, and you tuck the paper into your pocket, a little keepsake of the market's mischief. Historians still debate whether fortune-telling donkeys were a genuine tradition or simply a creative marketing scheme. Either way, the donkey seems perfectly content with its role in the day's pageantry. Nearby, a woman sells hand-painted fans, each one delicate as a butterfly's wing. She flutters one open to show you the detail, a tiny scene of lovers in a garden, a picnic under an ancient oak, and a small dog chasing a ball. The craftsmanship is exquisite, though the colors are slightly faded, as if they've been kissed by the sun one too many times. She leans in, whispering that a lady's fan is not just an accessory, but a language. One flick means go away. A snap shut means I'm angry. And an open flutter might mean I'm listening. You wonder how many flirtations have been carried on in coded fan gestures, and how many love stories were born under the watchful gaze of lace and painted paper. As you walk, you spot a man selling ribbons and trimmings, his stall bursting with spools in every hue imaginable. He proudly claims that his blue ribbons are the very same shade used in the court of Versailles, though you suspect that might be a bit of a stretch. Still, the ribbons catch the light, and you pause to admire the way they ripple in the breeze, like a miniature ocean in the middle of the market. A sudden burst of laughter draws your attention to a group of children clustered around a woman holding a small puppet theater. Her voice rises and falls in dramatic tones, and the children are entranced as the puppet's wooden figures, with painted faces and floppy hats, act out a story of a baker, a fox, and a stolen pie. The puppet's tiny arms wave wildly, and the children's giggles bubble up like a pot boiling over. You find yourself smiling too, caught by the simple joy of the scene. Across from the puppet show, a man in a ragged coat sells quills and ink pots, his voice low and gravelly as he talks about the magic of the written word. He dips a feather into an inkwell and scrawls a flourish across a scrap of paper, offering it to you as a charm against forgetfulness. You tuck it into your pocket, wondering if his quill has more magic than he lets on. A soft melody drifts from a street musician playing a hurdy-gurdy, the cranking of the handle blending with the haunting reedy tones of the instrument. The sound is both melancholy and comforting, a song that seems to wrap around your shoulders like a well-worn shawl. The musician nods as you pass, his fingers moving with practiced ease, and you drop a coin into his tin cup, watching it clink among the few others inside. The smell of roasted chestnuts wafts by, again fainter now, as the vendors begin to pack up for the day. A woman with a bundle of herbs tied at her waist offers you a small sprig of thyme, whispering that it's for courage in difficult times. Her fingers brush yours as she hands it over, rough and calloused, a reminder of hands that have worked hard for generations. You pause at the edge of the market, taking in the fading light, the soft hum of voices, the clatter of carts being loaded, and the quiet sigh of the city preparing for evening. There's a sense of something ancient here, older than the stones underfoot, older than the market itself, a rhythm of human connection, of goods exchanged and stories shared, of survival stitched together with threads of hope and laughter. As you move forward, you brush the sprig of thyme between your fingers, feeling its rough texture and breathing in its earthy scent. It's a small, simple thing, but it feels like a talisman, one you'll carry with you as you wander deeper into the hidden corners of this 18th century Parisian day. The market's heartbeat softens as the afternoon light shifts, stretching shadows longer, weaving gold into the cracks between stones. The bustle slows, but it never quite stops. Paris never does. You find yourself drawn toward the scent of melting beeswax and the flickering glow of candles in a shaded corner. A man sits cross-legged on a woven mat surrounded by tiny wooden boxes, each one carved with symbols you don't quite recognize. He looks up, a glimmer in his eye, and offers you a small matchstick dipped in wax. For your wishes, he murmurs, his voice barely more than a breath. You pause, feeling the matchstick's weight in your palm, imagining what wishes you might light with the flame so small. Historians still argue whether these wax charms were sold as genuine tools for invoking blessings, or simply as souvenirs to carry home in a coat pocket. Either way, there's something about the man's quiet presence, the way the candlelight reflects off his weathered hands, that makes you want to believe. Just beyond him, a woman with a cascade of dark curls sells hair combs and ribbons, her fingers darting like a sparrow's, as she weaves braids into a young girl's hair. She smiles at you, tilting her head as if to say, "Would you like a braid too?" You shake your head grinning, and she winks, her eyes crinkling at the corners like folded silk. Her table is a riot of color red velvet bows, small ivory combs, and spools of thread in every shade imaginable. A mother fusses over her daughter, debating whether the pink ribbon is too bold. The vendor assures her with a dramatic flourish that pink is very fashionable this season, at least in the salons of the wealthy. A little further on, you hear the distinct rhythmic clink, clink of a man sharpening knives. He works with a steady patience, the rasp of metal on stone, a quiet counterpoint to the market's fading hum. His whetstone glistens with water, catching the last rays of sun like a tiny mirror. You pause to watch him, hypnotized by the repetition, the scrape and hiss, the careful testing of each blade's edge against his thumb. The smell of metal, sharp and faintly tangy, fills the air. You wonder who his customers are, chefs perhaps, or butchers, but for now it's just the quiet moment of the blade and the stone. A man selling walking sticks waves you over, insisting that a proper stick can change your life. His voice is smooth, a practiced melody of persuasion. His sticks range from plain wooden poles to elaborate canes carved with animal heads, spiral patterns, and even one with a tiny brass bell that jingles as he demonstrates. He chuckles, tapping the bell, and says, "For those who like to announce their presence." You wonder if the cane is a fashion statement, a practical tool, or a subtle way to let the world know you're coming. You continue down the row, passing a woman who sells cloth scraps, odds and ends of silk linen, and rough burlap folded into neat stacks. She hums softly, her voice low and steady as she threads a needle through a patch of fabric. Every piece has a story, she says without looking up. Her fingers are quick, her needle flashing like a silver fish darting through water. A boy nearby offers roasted chickpeas from a cone of paper, the scent earthy and warm. He grins, his teeth a little crooked, and says they're good for your strength. You take a handful, the chickpeas still warm from the pan, and they crunch satisfyingly between your teeth. A little cluster of women stands near a stall where a man sells small brass charms, tiny birds' hearts, stars, even a miniature horse. He insists they bring luck, though he won't say exactly how. One woman laughs, holding up a tiny fish charm and asking if it will help her husband stop snoring. The man winks and says it might. You can't help but smile at the easy, playful banter. A sharp whistle cuts through the air, and you turn to see a man tossing wooden hoops in a game of skill. He beckons, inviting you to try, and you oblige, tossing a ring toward a painted peg. It bounces, wobbles, and lands with a clink. The man claps laughing and hands you a tiny wooden token as a prize. A lucky charm, he says, though you suspect it's mostly a bit of fun. As the sky softens into dusky blue, the sounds of the market take on a lullaby rhythm. The clatter of shutters being drawn close the last calls of vendors offering deals. The shuffle of feet beginning to wander homeward. You feel it all settle around you like a warm shawl. The laughter, the soft clinks, the hum of human life continuing in its gentle, stubborn way. The city breathes, and you breathe with it, each moment a stitch in the tapestry of the day. The day drifts on the sun, slipping lower, and the shadows stretch long across the cobbles as if Paris itself is exhaling. You feel it in your bones, the quiet shift from busy bustle to something more contemplative. The market doesn't close so much as it softens like a candle's glow at twilight. A soft voice calls your attention, a woman selling baskets, each woven by hand, the willow still fragrant and supple. She smiles, her hands darkened by years of labor, and shows you her work baskets large and small, for bread, for eggs, for flowers, even one just big enough to hold a cat. Though she laughs, saying, "No, cat would sit still in it for long. You run your hand along the weave, feeling the roughness of bark smoothed under her fingers, and she hums a little tune, a lullaby as she works. Historians still wonder how much of the market's life was shaped by these quiet crafts, baskets, fans, small everyday things, and how much by the larger forces of trade and politics. But standing here, it's easy to believe the small things mattered most. You catch a whiff of something savory and turn toward a pot of simmering stew. The vendor, a burly man with a ruddy face, stirs it lazily, sending up clouds of steam that make your stomach rumble. He offers a spoonful and you taste a blend of lentils, herbs, and just a hint of garlic. It's humble, but it's hearty, the kind of meal that sticks to your ribs and carries you through long, cold nights. A group of boys races past their shoes, slapping on the stones, each holding a small wooden hoop. They roll with sticks, laughing breathlessly as they dart between stalls. One nearly crashes into a woman carrying a stack of folded linen, who scolds him in a sharp clipped tone that somehow carries a hint of affection. The boy grins, bows exaggeratedly, and dashes off again, the laughter leaving a warm echo behind. The scent of fresh bread drifts over from a baker's stall, where loaves sit cooling on a wide wooden trays. Crust golden edges cracked just enough to reveal the soft pillowy insides. A woman leans in close to sniff sighs with pleasure and tucks a baguette under her arm like a treasure. You can't resist and you buy a small roll, tearing off a piece as you walk, the warmth of it spreading through your fingers, the yeasty scent mingling with the cool evening air. A vendor selling buttons waves you over his table, a scatter of glass, brass, bone, and wood. He holds up a tiny carved button shaped like a fish and says, "For luck," though you suspect it's just his way of adding a little charm to his pitch. Still, you pocket the button. Why not? It's small, smooth, and the kind of thing that could sit in your pocket for years. A quiet reminder of a day spent among the market's hum. Nearby, a man with an easel dabs at a watercolor, his brush moving quickly, capturing the market in loose strokes, figures blurring into color, the red of apples, the soft gray of stones, the blue of a merchant's apron. You pause to watch him, the sound of the brush a faint whisper against paper. He doesn't look up, but he smiles as if he knows you're watching, and you wonder if you'll appear in his painting, a figure half formed in the flow of pigment. A young girl sells sprigs of lavender tied with string, her hands stained purple from the blossoms. She offers you one and you tuck it behind your ear, the scent soothing floral, with a hint of something deeper, almost like honey. She grins a gap-toothed smile that makes you smile too, and you wonder how many flowers she sold today, how many more she'll sell before the market closes for the night. The hum of voices is softer now, like a lullaby for the city. You pass a man mending shoes, his fingers flying over a leather boot, the rhythmic tap 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 of his hammer blending with the faint strains of a violin playing somewhere nearby. The smell of polish, the glint of brass buckles, the faint crackle of a fire in a brazier, it all settles into your senses like a blanket. A woman with a basket of apples sings softly, her voice rising and falling in a melody you can't quite place. She tosses an apple to a passing child who squeals in delight, and the apple rolls across the cobble, its red skin catching the last light of day. You pause at a stall where a man sells ink and parchment, his fingers stained black, the nib of his pen glinting as he scrawls a flourish across a page. For letters, for secrets, he says, his voice low as if sharing a confidence. You wonder what stories have been written with his ink, love letters, confessions, maybe even a recipe or two. And for a moment, you imagine yourself penning a note under the flicker of a candle, the scratch of quill on paper filling the quiet. The market hums around you, a fading heartbeat, and you let it carry you, the sights and scents and sounds wrapping around you like a warm, familiar melody. You move on slower, now your steps steady your breath in rhythm with the cities. The sky is settling into a dusky blue, the last threads of sunlight weaving through the narrow alleyways as if trying to hold on to the day a little longer. Lanterns flicker to life, their golden glow casting long, lazy shadows that sway gently on the walls. The market's heartbeat has softened into a slow, even hum, and you feel as if you're drifting along its currents carried by the gentle rhythm of evening settling over Paris. A man in a dark apron is sweeping up the crumbs beneath his pastry stall, the scent of sugar and butter still lingering in the air like a whispered promise. You watch him move, his motions unhurried, the broom brushing softly against the stones. His pastries, croissants, tarts, and tiny fruit-studded cakes are mostly gone, save for a few that he tucks carefully into a paper bag, likely for his family. He catches your eye and offers a small, tired smile that feels like a shared secret, as if you both know the magic of a warm pastry on a cold evening. Historians still debate whether the rise of the Parisian cafe culture grew from markets like this, where food and community intertwined in the quiet glow of twilight. Not far from him, a young woman packs away bolts of cloth, her hands deft and sure. Her fingers linger on the textures, coarse linen, soft muslin velvet that seems to shimmer like moonlight. She hums as she works, a soft lilting tune that feels older than the stones beneath your feet. She glances up briefly as if sensing your gaze and offers a nod before tucking the last fabric into a trunk. There's a pride in her movements, a quiet certainty that her craft, though perhaps overlooked by the bustle of the day, holds its own importance in the fabric of life. A few steps away, an elderly man with a thick mustache and a weathered cap polishes brass candlesticks, the soft, repetitive sound of cloth on a metal blending with the distant murmur of voices. The candlesticks gleam under his careful hand, catching the lantern light in small, bright flashes. He tells you with a wink that they're perfect for romantic evenings or important declarations, whichever comes first. You chuckle, wondering how many stories have flickered to life by candlelight, how many secrets whispered into its glow. A cluster of children plays nearby, their laughter light as air. They chase one another, skipping between stalls, their shadows stretching long and thin in the fading light. One little boy pauses to tie his shoe, his face scrunched in concentration, and a woman, perhaps, his mother, bends to help, her hands gentle, her voice low. You catch the faintest trace of their words, a soft scolding, a reassuring pat, a moment of tenderness wrapped in the ordinary. You pass a man selling roasted chestnuts from a small cart, the scent smoky and rich, the shells crackling as they warm in the pan. He offers you a taste, and the nut is warm in your hand, the flavor earthy and comforting as it crumbles between your teeth. You wonder how many others have stood right here, warming their hands on a winter's night, sharing chestnuts and stories under the same stars. The lanterns glow brighter now, their soft light shimmering on polished brass and worn wood. A woman with a basket of herbs gestures you closer, offering a sprig of rosemary for remembrance. She says, her voice low and steady. You accept it, breathing in the sharp, clean scent, and feel it settle in your lungs like a quiet promise. A man nearby is selling simple clay cups, each one hand-thrown and slightly imperfect. He holds one up to the lantern light, the clay warm and earthy, the glaze a soft, uneven blue. He tells you that in every cup there's a story, a conversation shared, a quiet moment, a memory. You think of tea steaming in the early morning, of wine shared between friends, and you understand. A small dog trots past its tail, wagging a scrap of fabric tied around its neck. It pauses to sniff at your shoes before bounding off, leaving behind the faintest scent of cinnamon and dust. The dog's owner, a wiry man with a basket of spools of thread, calls after it with a fond, exasperated tone, his voice blending into the market's fading hum. A faint breeze stirs, carrying the scent of wood smoke and bred the last whispers of the day. You feel it on your skin, cool and gentle, as if the city itself is breathing a soft sigh. The sounds blur together: soft footsteps, a quiet laugh, the distant clink of a closing stall. And you're just one thread in the tapestry of this moment, a witness to the lives unfolding in the glow of lantern light, a quiet part of the story that will drift into memory with the rising moon. You walk on the rosemary in your hand, the chestnut's warmth fading the air, softening into a hush, and you let the market settle into your bones. The moon is a pale smudge in the sky, now rising above the rooftops like a soft, watchful eye. The market continues to breathe slower and deeper as the last few vendors finish their work. You feel the change in the air, the way the city stretches and settles into a quieter rhythm. The world hasn't stopped, it's just dimmed, mellowed, softened like a page left out in the sun. You stroll past a man balancing apples on a small wooden plank. He's trying to stack them in a pyramid, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. A couple of apples tumble and he curses under his breath, but when he notices you watching, he grins and winks as if to say, "Ah, well, it's all part of the charm." The apples are glossy, round, and plump, their skins a mix of red and green, dappled like they've been kissed by sunlight and rain. You wonder how many apples have passed through these streets, how many bites taken, how many pockets filled, how many seeds planted in quiet corners of Paris. Nearby, a woman with a soft shawl around her shoulders sings that she sells thin, lacy biscuits stacked in delicate bundles. Her voice is smooth, warm, like spiced wine, and the biscuits melt on your tongue, crisp and buttery, dissolving into a hint of almond. She hums as she hands you one, her fingers brushing yours lightly, and you feel for a fleeting moment as if you've been folded into a lullaby. A man selling small pouches of lavender leans on his stall, his eyes half lidded with sleepiness. He nods to you, murmuring, "For your dreams." The lavender scent is strong, but not overpowering, earthy floral, a whisper of something old and wise. Historians still argue whether lavender was more prized for its medicinal uses or for its ability to soothe restless minds. You tuck a sachet into your coat pocket, imagining it warding off nightmares like a tiny fragrant shield. You pass a group of women sewing by lantern light, their needles glinting in the glow, hands moving like a chorus of quiet birds. They're repairing clothes, stitching worn seams, patching holes, their laughter soft and low as they share stories. One of them glances up, her face lined with years, and you see the tired joy in her eyes, the satisfaction of a day's work done, a task completed, a thread tied off. A cart creaks by, pulled by a stout horse with a dusting of gray in its mane. The driver nods to you, a small, respectful dip of his head. His cart is piled high with sacks, grain perhaps, or flour, or something more mysterious. You catch the faint scent of oats and earth mingling with the distant hint of burning wood from a chimney nearby. You stop to admire a stall selling marble paper, the colors swirling like miniature storms caught in rectangles. The vendor, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, tells you that each sheet is unique, a painting that you can fold into a letter. He runs his finger along the edge of a page, the pattern rippling like water, and you wonder how many letters have been wrapped in such beauty, secrets whispered across miles, feelings folded between lines, promises sealed in wax. A faint sound of bells draws you toward a woman selling small jingling trinkets, charms, pendants, and tiny bells that tinkle with the lightest touch. She demonstrates one, holding it to her ear and grinning. "For luck or for love," she says, though she won't say which is which. You find yourself tempted to buy one just for the sound, a tiny echo of joy you can carry with you. A man with a long curling mustache sells roasted chestnuts from a battered cart. The chestnuts crack and pop in their shells, sending little bursts of steam into the air. He hands you a warm paper packet and you hold it close, the heat seeping into your palms like a blessing. The smell is rich, nutty, and a little smoky, a reminder of hearts and autumn leaves. The market is thinning now, the stalls folding up, the voices fading into the hush of evening. You watch as a woman extinguishes the lanterns on her cart, the last flicker of flame dying out. The shadows grow deeper, but they feel soft, not heavy, a blanket tucking the city in for the night. And you walk on slow and steady, the sounds of the market lingering in your ears like a distant lullaby. The scent of lavender in your pocket, the warmth of the chestnut in your hands, the softness of biscuit crumbs on your tongue, all of it threads together, stitching you into the quiet hum of the city, the secret life of its streets, the heartbeat of a Parisian day winding down. The street grows quieter now, the market's energy like a tide that has receded, leaving behind the soft echoes of a day well lived. You walk past a man who's stacking crates, his movements slow and careful, the wood thudding against stone in a gentle rhythmic beat. Each crate is marked with a painted symbol: flour, salt, sugar, small reminders of the goods that have passed through these hands, feeding the city in 100 unseen ways. His sleeves are rolled up, his forearms dusted with flour, and he hums a tune that fades into the night air. A soft breeze stirs the hem of your coat, carrying the scent of roasted onions and fading smoke. You follow it to a woman carefully folding up her stall, the last of her savory tarts, laid out in neat rows, onion cheese a few, with thin slices of potato. She sees you and smiles, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and hands you a small slice wrapped in paper. For the road, she says. The tart is warm in your hands, the crust flaking beneath your fingers, and you savor the earthy sweetness of onions softened by the slow fire of the oven. A man nearby tends a small brazier, the coals glowing a soft orange in the gathering dark. He sells roasted chestnuts and small bundles of kindling, tiny, neatly tied stacks of twigs that smell faintly of resin. He tells you almost conspiratorially that these sticks are just right for starting a cozy fire, as if they hold a secret magic. You imagine him sitting by his own fire later, watching the flames dance and crackle, the kindling feeding the flames as gently as he feeds the market's quiet warmth. You pass a woman with a basket of worn books, their spines cracked, the pages yellowed. She runs her fingers over the covers as if they are old friends. One title catches your eye, a collection of poetry, the letters faded, the edges softened by time. She tells you some words are meant to be found by the right person at the right time. You wonder how many secrets, how many long-forgotten dreams are tucked between those pages. A pair of musicians sits at the edge of the square, their instruments resting on their knees. One plucks a lute, the other taps a soft rhythm on a small drum. Their melody is slow, and winding a tune that feels like it's been playing for centuries, weaving through the stones and the air like a whisper. You pause to listen, letting the notes drift over you, your breath slowing in time with the rhythm. Historians still debate whether these wandering players were considered respectable tradesmen or simply tolerated street performers, but tonight they feel like the keepers of a quiet ancient magic. As you wander, the market shifts into its nighttime form. A few vendors remain selling candles in glass jars that glow softly, their light pooling on the cobbles. One woman cradles a bundle of dried herbs tied with string: rosemary, thyme, lavender, and she hands you a sprig saying it's for dreams. You tuck it into your pocket, the scent mingling with the other fragrances of the night. You pass the stall where a man sells scraps of leather, each piece carefully folded, smelling rich and earthy. He tells you they're for mending or making or whatever your hands dream up. His fingers are rough stained with years of dye and oil, but his smile is soft, his voice warm as he wishes you well. A young boy chases a moth that flutters near a lantern, giggling as he leaps, his footsteps light and quick. His mother calls after him gently, and he returns breathless and grinning, holding out the moth as if it were a treasure. She laughs, her voice soft as a lullaby, and takes the moth into her hands, cupping it briefly before letting it fly free again. The sounds around you grow softer still, a broom sweeping in gentle strokes, a pair of women murmuring in the doorway of a shop, the clink of coins as a vendor counts the day's earnings. The sky above deepens into indigo, a few faint stars flickering to life, and the city seems to hold its breath for a moment, balanced between the hum of day and the hush of night. You walk on, your footsteps slow, the rhythm of the street settling into your bones. The lavender sprig is warm in your pocket, the taste of onion tart still on your tongue, and the music soft and distant lingers in your ears like a memory you'll carry home. Paris, you realize, is a city stitched together by small moments, woven baskets, shared songs, warm pastries, and stories told under flickering lanterns. And you're part of that tapestry now, one thread among many woven quietly into the fabric of the night. The night deepens, the lanterns casting golden pools on the cobblestones, and the market breathes its last sigh. You pause at a corner where a woman is folding linens, white cream, pale blue, her hands moving with a practiced grace. Each fold crisp, each layer smoothed down, as if she's tucking the day away beneath the fabric. The scent of lavender clings to the cloth, faint but calming, and you imagine beds made warm and fresh with these linens, the gentle rustle of sheets as someone drifts into sleep. She glances up at you briefly, a quiet nod shared between strangers at the close of the day. A few stalls away, a man sweeps sawdust into neat little piles. He sells wooden spoons and small carved toys animals, soldiers, simple spinning tops. You pick up a spoon, the handle smooth from being held, and he tells you it's for soup, for stirring stories into broth. He laughs at his own words, and you can't help but smile at the image, a pot bubbling, gently a spoon stirring not just ingredients but stories too. The idea lingers like the scent of wood smoke in the air. A soft sound draws your attention, a woman playing a small harp, her fingers plucking notes that shimmer in the quiet like stars reflected in water. The melody is gentle, almost wistful, as if the music itself is drifting into dreams. You stand still for a moment, letting the sound wrap around you like a blanket. Historians still wonder how much music shaped the atmosphere of these markets, whether it was background or centerpiece, but tonight it feels essential, like the heartbeat beneath the surface. A boy walks past balancing a bundle of firewood on his shoulder, his steps slow and measured as if the weight is both burden and badge. His boots scuff against the cobbles and you catch a glimpse of his face, young but lined with responsibility, the kind of quiet resilience that grows in the cracks between need and duty. The scent of beeswax draws you toward a stall selling candles, their light soft and steady, the wax warm under your fingertips. The vendor, an older woman with silver hair pulled back in a neat braid, tells you each candle is blessed by the night itself. You imagine lighting one on a winter's evening, the flame a small faithful glow against the dark. A man selling ink nods as you pass his wares, displayed in neat rows, bottles of black sepia and a deep dark blue that glimmers like the night sky. He dips a pen into a pot and writes your name on a scrap of paper, the letters flowing smooth and elegant. He hands it to you with a small bow as if bestowing a gift. You tuck it into your pocket, a quiet token of the market's gentle magic. The market is nearly empty now, but a few stragglers linger, sharing quiet words, exchanging small bundles of goods, an onion here, a loaf of bread there. A couple sits on the edge of a step, their shoulders touching as they share a piece of fruit, the juice glinting on their fingers in the lamplight. They smile at you as you pass, and you smile back, the moment warm and simple. You pause at a cart where a man is carefully wrapping glass bottles in straw. He tells you they hold oils lavender, rosemary, mint, each one a little vial of comfort for the nights ahead. He holds one up the glass, catching the light, and you imagine the scent drifting through a quiet room, softening the edges of a long day. A faint rustle draws your eye to a bundle of fabric tied to a pole, an old faded flag, its colors muted but still proud. The vendor tells you it's from a festival long past, a memory stitched into cloth. You wonder how many festivals this market has seen, how many nights filled with music and laughter, how many stories whispered beneath its banners. The air grows cooler, a gentle breeze sighing through the emptying square. The lanterns flicker lower, the glow softening, and the market's heartbeat fades into a soft, steady hum. You walk slowly now, your steps unhurried, your breath in rhythm with the city's quiet pulse. The market may close, but its spirit lingers in the scent of lavender and the glow of candles, in the soft imprint of footsteps on the worn stones. You carry it with you, tucked into your pockets and woven into your senses, a quiet melody that will echo through your dreams. Paris sleeps, and you too find yourself drifting, wrapped in the gentle hum of the market's end. Now here's your 300-word wind down. As the night settles over Paris, the city exhales its breath soft and warm. The market's glow fades into memory, the lanterns dimming, the cobblestones cool beneath your feet. The scents linger, a trace of lavender, the smoky hint of roasted chestnuts, the sweetness of fruit and honeyed tarts. You feel the warmth of the evening air as it drifts past, brushing your skin like a quiet blessing, and you hear the distant echoes of laughter and song like whispers carried by the breeze. You pause, standing still for a moment, and close your eyes. The hum of the market, the quiet shuffle of footsteps, the soft crackle of a lantern's flame, all of it melts into a soft golden blur. You breathe deeply, letting the night fill you, the memories of the market's heartbeat weaving into the fabric of your thoughts. As you walk slowly away, the air cools, the streets empty, and the city sighs into a gentle hush. Your steps are soft, your mind easy, the weight of the day lifted, replaced by the quiet wonder of small moments, a smile shared, a song half heard, the scent of lavender on the wind. You tuck these fragments into the corners of your heart, carrying them with you into sleep. And as you drift off, you feel it, a quiet peace, a soft glow, a sense of being held in the arms of the night. The market has closed, but its magic lingers, a lullaby whispered across the cobblestones, a promise that tomorrow it will open once more. Sweet dreams.